Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Harivajagacharya Astatarasata Sri Madhis Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There's lots of commentary on these verses that we're reading. And that's nice, but it's taking even several days to cover one verse. This morning, we will be finishing, all goes well, Canto 10, Chapter 28, Text 14, and then we're going to start on 15 and continue tomorrow. 10, 28, 14. This is the setting, is Krishna deciding, based upon the desire of his dear devotees, the elders of Vrindavan, Nanda and the other cowherd men, to see his abode, his eternal abode. And they not only see it, but we've been hearing at the conclusion of the pastimes of Krishna before he left this world, they attained it. And there's an interesting description quoted again and again from Padma Purana of how that happened. Now, we're continuing with commentary. This is Sanatana Goswami's commentary on Brihat Bhagavatamrita 1.3.44. We're speaking of the devotees in Vaikuntha that have similar, not identical, but similar quality to the Brijbasis. So here's the translation, 1.3.44. Those devotees have abandoned every kind of false pride, and they have attained the world beyond the material modes and devoid of all fear, namely Vaikuntha, which is Satchidananda, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Commentary. The residents of Vaikuntha are greater not only than the materialists, the candidates for liberation, and the liberated, but even greater than Lord Shiva. According to his own view of himself, Lord Shiva is subject to the influence of false ego, whereas the devotees in Vaikuntha are free from this defect. By virtue of this freedom from false pride, Vaishnavas attain Vaikuntha, which, in spite of being a particular place, is not temporary and illusory like the places of the material world. The eternal existence of Vaikuntha is full of pure consciousness and unlimitedly satisfying bliss. It has none of the restrictions of material existence. Paragraph. Many Puranas describe the absolute perfection of Vaikuntha. For example, in the conversation between Brahma and Narada in Sri Narada Pancharatra, gives the particular section, translation of that section. Impossible to attain for non-Vaishnavas, the world called Vaikuntha is devoid of the three material modes and full in the 6 divine traits. It is rich with eternally perfect souls who all have those same 6 traits and who appear with the 5 different ages of life. The all-auspicious Vaikuntha is beautified by many palaces and assembly halls, and by wells, tanks, ponds, gardens, forests, and groves of trees. That transcendental world worshipped by the demigods is more brilliantly effulgent than 10,000 suns. And another reference from Brahmanda Purana, quote, it is the abode of countless spiritual qualities, a world of unapproachable supreme light. It cannot be perceived by material senses, nor compared to anything known. It is supremely ecstatic and beyond the scope of the senses. Pretty good travel advertisement. Want to go there. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, verses 9 through 10. We've been hearing these again and again. It's Brahma has done some austerities. Lord Vishnu is pleased with Brahma, and Vishnu decides to show him the spiritual world. Here's the translation of those two verses. Very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, the personality of Godhead was pleased to manifest his personal abode Vaikuntha, the supreme planet above all others. This transcendental abode of the Lord is adored by all self-realized persons, free from all miseries and fear of illusory existence. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor have they any influence in goodness. There is no predominance of the influence of time, what to speak of the illusory external energy, semicolon. It, that's illusory external energy, cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, both the demigods and demons worship the Lord as devotees. And then these two verses that we've been reading, 14, and then we're going to touch on 15. Here's their translation. Canto 10, Chapter 28, Text 14-15. Thus, deeply considering the situation of the cowherd men, the all-merciful Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, revealed to them his abode, which is beyond material darkness. Lord Krishna revealed the indestructible spiritual effulgence, which is unlimited, conscious, and eternal. Sages see that spiritual existence in trance when their consciousness is freed from the modes of material nature. Unquote. These verses, that's all of the above, or the one immediately above, the Brahma Jyoti specifically. These verses identify Vaikuntha with the Brahma Jyoti, the effulgent light of the all-pervading Supreme, that is, with the same absolute existence described in the Upanishads under the name Brahman. With the eye of intelligent, self-satisfied sages, or munis, envision Vaikuntha, but they are not fit to achieve it. Then, once again, Brihat Bhagavatamrita, but this is now part 2, and it's toward the very beginning, chapter 1, text 14, where Uttara is describing to Parikshit Maharaj the Vaikuntha realm. That abode, Vaikuntha, is made of concentrated ecstasy and pure consciousness, even, so that's Anand and Chit, even for liberated souls it is difficult to attain, but the Lord's devotees who are free from selfish desires reach it at once. Commentary. Mother Uttara now tells her son Parikshit that she understands about the transcendental nature of Vaikuntha. Parikshit has heard similar general descriptions of the Vaikuntha atmosphere from Shukadeva Goswami in the 2nd and 10th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, what to speak of the celestial demigods? This is Bhagavatam 2.2, 17 to 18. What to speak of the celestial demigods empowered to rule over mundane creatures? In that transcendental state, there is no supremacy of devastating time, which controls even the demigods themselves. Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, not even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that the supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee is in absolute harmony with the Lord, and does not create perplexities, but worships the Lord, the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. And then his commentary goes again to 14:15 of this section, 28. So now back to the commentary. So this is a verse spoken by Uttara, so she goes on. In text 14 through 19, Uttara similarly explains in a general way the transcendental existence of Vaikuntha. The Lord's impersonal effulgence faintly reflects the spiritual atmosphere of Vaikuntha, which is the fullest manifestation of the absolute truth. Paragraph. Having re-established a personal relationship with the Lord, pure Vaishnavas attain Vaikuntha. Impersonalists, however, at best attain the Brahmajyoti effulgence, where they realize their eternal existence without knowing their relationship with the Lord, or the ecstatic pleasure that comes from serving him in that relationship. In other words, the Vaikuntha atmosphere is a super intensified version of the Brahmajyoti sky, and thus the life enjoyed by the Lord's devotees in Vaikuntha is much more wonderful than the comparatively insignificant pleasure of merging into the Brahmajyoti. And finally, and it covers text 14, we'll go on to 15, there's a reference here in commentary to Gopal Tapani Upanishad, Purva Tapani 47. The abode of Goloka is pure, Kevalam. The Lord is shown to be Brahman, with the last two lines quoted from Shruti. He, Lord, is without movement, anejat, yet he is quicker than the mind. He is beyond the power of the mind. The Devatas, like Brahma, cannot attain him. He pervades everything in time and space. In Harivangsha, Indra speaks to Krishna. Now, reference is going to be made of a planet of cows. And maybe you remember from the Govardhan Leela, where Indra comes with Surabhi. Commentary says it's not the Surabhi of Goloka, because Indra doesn't have access to Goloka. That's not where Surabhi came from. Rather, our acharyas explain, there's a heavenly realm where there is a Surabhi, and there's other cows in that Surabhi Loka. So, Harivangsha, this is now in that Leela where Indra is speaking to Krishna with Surabhi by his side. Above this is the planet of the cows. That's these heavenly Surabhi planet. Protected by the perfected devotees. O Krishna, it is all-pervading, great, attained after realization of the Lord. Above that is your abode, full of great powers, Gokula, which I cannot understand, though I have asked Brahma. So, when Indra had his problem, he went to Brahma. This is Harivangsha. He went to Brahma. And Brahma said, shame on you, Indra, but I got a solution. Let's go bring Surabhi. So they went to Surabhi's planet. And Brahma instructed Surabhi, go with him. And she said, yes, sir. I'll be happy to go see Krishna. So Indra went with Surabhi. And so this is Harivangsha's version of the sequence of events, how it came to be that Surabhi went with Indra. There's other explanations, but this is Harivangsha's explanation. And so Indra asked Brahma, apparently, I've asked Brahma about Krishna's abode. And above that is your abode full of great powers, which I cannot understand, though I've asked Brahma. That's Harivansh's quote. And now concluding, Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu? You heard of that before? It's a book written by Jiva Goswami, and it's one of his so many books. And he wrote a book of how you write a champu. Then he wrote some champus. It's a type of literature that has certain rules, and in Gopal Champu, it's retelling Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. That's what it is, following the Champu rules. So here's the section that we're reading from Gopal Champu. Jiva Goswami makes reference to Brahma's prayers. Brahma's prayers is Canto 10, Chapter 14. Chapter 14. Brahma's prayers. Brahma prayed, "My mind become bewildered just trying to think of what reward other than you could be found anywhere. You are the embodiment of all benedictions, which you bestow upon these residents of the cowherd community of Vrindavan. You have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So what is left for you to give to these devotees of Vrindavan, whose homes, wealth, friends, dear relations, bodies, children, and very lives and hearts are dedicated only to you?" So I'm going to expand on that. Thus, they have great prema which controls me. That's Brahma. When their minds become stunned in separation from me, this is Krishna speaking. It is not because of ignorance. Yeah. So Krishna's talking about this pastime of Brahma Hrida showing the Goloka and his relation with the Brijvasis. They have great prema which controls me. When their minds become stunned in separation from me, it is not because of ignorance. I can never consider that their prema is similar to the prema of others. Caring for me in many ways, they have developed desire arising from bewilderment. Previously, the bewilderment arises from prema, then it says prema arises from bewilderment, which is actually prema for me. They only know one thing. From the beginning, I have been bound by the obligation to them. Though I do not give the opportunity to become obligated to other devotees, I am a debtor to them, and they are creditors to me. When they give everything to me, their condition is my condition. My supreme power is obedient to them. It is not possible to surpass them. You heard Divya's question yesterday? Show her this section. I'll forward it to you. Okay? Nanda, who was astonished on seeing the power of Varuna, is a cause of sorrow for me, for I can never become absorbed in prema for him and others as much as they are absorbed in prema for me. Thinking about this subject, I will now make them realize their own greatness through an experience of Yogamaya, filled with auspicious meditation. After thinking in this way, on another day, Nanda and the cowherds were present in the assembly with Brahmanas at the city gate, as recounted in the Viraha Purana. They thought that if they bathed in the full moon of Kartik month in Brahma Radha means lake, which gave blessings to Akrura, although that happened later. Blessings to Akrura happened later. They would quickly receive full results for their desires, thinking this action to be the best. They went to Brahmahrida with their cowherd relatives in the early morning. Krishna went along with them and submerged himself in the river, and then went to the bank. He then showed them Goloka, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, endowed with form, taste, fragrance, touch, and sound by its spiritual nature, and which is not revealed even to Atmaramas, since it is covered by the Lord's energy so that no one can see it. That place is called Brahmaloka, Brahmaloka has different meanings. Brahmaloka can mean the planet of Brahma, and it can mean what it says here. A planet with the human form of the Supreme Brahman, visible by withdrawing the curtain, as if revealing a wonderful picture. They saw that Krishna, the tilak of their family, was sitting among cowherds similar to themselves. In fact, they saw themselves. The Vedas personified were singing praises of Krishna's pastimes, starting from his birth. This confirmed the powers of Krishna to the cowherds. Seeing Krishna with his people in Brahmaloka, the inhabitants of Braja gave up lamentation and felt increasing happiness because of bliss mixed with astonishment. Krishna, the enemy of the demons, then separated the people of Braja from Goloka in order to complete his pastimes of afflicting the demons on earth. The speaker concluded as follows: "O Nanda, this is a direct quote from this Gopal Champu. You have given birth to a son who conquered the planet of Varuna and showed you and your people this planet. I offer respects to Krishna, who revealed Goloka and showed that the cowherds reside within Goloka, and Goloka takes shelter of them." So that's the last reference describing text 14. Now here's 15, which we've heard a couple times just this morning. Lord Krishna revealed this is text 15 translation. Lord Krishna revealed the indestructible spiritual effulgence, Brahmajyoti, which is unlimited, conscious, and eternal. Sages see that spiritual existence in trance when their consciousness is free of the modes of material nature. Purport. In text 14, that's the previous one, Lord Krishna revealed to the residents of Vrindavan his own abode, the spiritual planet of Krishnaloka. This and innumerable other Vaikuntha planets float in an infinite ocean of spiritual light called Brahmajyoti. That spiritual light is, in fact, the spiritual sky, which Krishna also quite naturally revealed to the residents of Vrindavan. For example, if we want to show the moon to a child, we say, "Look, up in the sky, see the moon over there in the sky?" Similarly, Lord Krishna revealed the vast spiritual sky to the residents of Vrindavan, but as emphasized in text 14 and in the following text 16, the actual destination of the Lord's associates was his own spiritual planet. And only a little bit of commentary, that will continue tomorrow. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, Satyam in the verse means all-pervading. Jnanam here means non-material. Anantam means without limit. Sanatanam means nityasiddha. This place, the Jnanis, Munaha, who transcend the gunas, see it in samadhi. Though the Vrindavan seen by the people situated on earth also has the same nature as it is Brahmananda Swarup, its extreme sweetness only is revealed, not its Aishwarya aspect. That's Gokula. Because of the covering Maya while being situated within the material world. It should be the covering of Maya. Maya is like a clay vessel or pot, hiding the light of a lamp or Brahmajyoti within it. Thus, Krishna showed the Brahmajyoti, which is beyond the material world, not that manifested within the earth planet. Not that manifested within the earth planet. Not clear what he's saying. When he revealed, the text 15 uses the term Brahmajyoti. He revealed the Brahmajyoti, but the effulgence is Sanatanam. It's eternal. So it's not light like in this world, which is not eternal. The light of the sun is said to be a reflection of the light of Brahmajyoti. It's a whole other topic. Okay, so next paragraph, Vishwanath. The form of Bhagavan, however, is much more sweet than the Brahma Swarup, or Brahmajyoti. This is confirmed by the realization of the Atmaramas, such as Shukadev, right? He had realization of Brahman and he was more attracted to Krishna. Though the form of Bhagavan is also all-pervading, it appears limited in a form of medium size, semicolon. Though free from the 6 transformations, it seems to undergo birth, maturity, and decline, semicolon. And though free from the faults of disturbance, etc., he seems to undergo hunger and thirst, sweat, fear, illusion, and to receive blows in battle. This is because he has unlimited inconceivable energies. Similarly, Vrindavan, like the body of the Lord, which spreads itself through millions of universes, as was seen by Brahma, is also unlimited. The Lord says, quote, this Vrindavan spread over 5 yojanas is like my body, unquote. And though devoid of material disturbances according to the scriptures in such statements as, quote, one should remember the moving and non-moving entities of Vrindavan, which is free from the 6 disturbances, unquote. It is the astonishing shelter of men, animals, birds, and trees which have hunger, thirst, birth, old age, want, and dissolution. Jiva Goswami's commentary is really short. Quote, what is that object beyond Prakriti, unquote? It is described in general terms. That's his commentary. And last, Sanatana Goswami writes, he showed a place superior to the material world of Brahma. The phrases are arranged according to the greater cause being later. That's a Nyaya rule. Cause. Greater causes later. And we'll see what he means by that. The word yat excluded that they saw the Lord. Speaking of the place, he now speaks of the form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Yad indicates the Lord's aspect of Brahman. Quote, that form was eternal and unlimited light of Brahman, because of which even masters of yoga surpassing the gunas of Maya who are absorbed in samadhi see it. They saw Brahman, the residents of Braja, which masters of yoga see. Even Atmaramas, giving up liberation, concentrating on bhakti, see it. Second canto, again, these same verses. Lord Vishnu, satisfied with Brahma's austerity, showed him Vaikuntha. It's a nice section. 29.9 and 10. The Lord, gratified by his worship, Brahma's worship, showed Brahma Maha Vaikuntha, to which nothing is superior, which is free of suffering, confusion, and fear of offenses, and which is praised by devatas who constantly see the self. In Vaikuntha, there is no rajas or tamas, no sattva mixed with rajas and tamas. There is no influence of time, there is no influence of Maya at all. What to speak of its products, such as material elements. In Vaikuntha, the inhabitants are fully dedicated to the Lord and are worshipable by the devas, asuras, and devotees. Then he quotes something else. I don't know what it is. Itihasa Samucha, in the story of Mudga Lopa. Never heard of it before, so don't ask me what's that one. Quote, above the abode of Brahma is the supreme abode of Vishnu. It is pure and eternal, the highest light. It is called Brahman. Between Prakriti and the spiritual sky lies the Viraja river. Beyond the river lies the eternal spiritual sky of 3 parts. Beyond the Viraja and the spiritual sky is Brahman. It is worshipped by persons trying to attain impersonal Brahman. Unquote. Interesting. In Narada Pancharatra, another section, that's all just describing the kingdom of God and what was being shown to the cowherd men. Translation. The place called Vaikuntha is beyond the material world, endowed with 6 qualities, devoid of 3 material gunas and not obtainable by non-devotees. It is filled with eternally perfect devotees engaged in service during 5 parts of the day. There are halls and palaces which are resplendent with forests and groves. The place is decorated with wells, ponds, and canals and groves of trees. This spiritual place, praised by the devotees, is as effulgent as 10,000 suns. Another reference, Brahma Purana. This place is beyond matter and endowed with 6 qualities because it is similar to the Lord. There reside Nityasiddhas, or eternal associates like Garuda. They are engaged in service during 5 parts of the day. Just a little bit more. This paragraph, the commentary, that place is endowed with unlimited qualities and great effulgence. It is difficult to understand invisible to material eyes, incomparable, supremely blissful, and beyond the senses. The place of living, or avasam, has qualities of the Lord, Ananta, who has unlimited qualities. And last, the place cannot be attained by the powers of Brahma and others. Its power is the greatest. It cannot be approached because it is the same as Para Brahman, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. It cannot be seen by the eye, or senses, or mind. And we'll continue tomorrow. The specific language preceding Krishna showing what he showed, the contemplation of the cowherd men was to see Vaikuntha and to see Brahman. Those two terms are used. And so Krishna showed them Vaikuntha and Brahman. And to show Brahman, or Brahmaloka, means his own abode, because that's also what they wanted to see, his abode. But they're considering him to be Narayan, at least for a few minutes. And Narayan's abode is Vaikuntha. So he's showing them, there's spoken over and over and over and over, that their place is the highest, that's Gokula, even higher than within Gokula, an aspect or dimension or reality within Gokula is Goloka, which Goloka shows more majesty even than Gokula. And there's more sweetness in Gokula than in Goloka. There's all this explanation back and forth and back and forth. So they're in the highest abode. They don't realize it. It's part of the sweetness. And they want to see his abode. And the language used is Vaikuntha and Brahman. So Vaikuntha has majesty, and Goloka has majesty. Not majesty plus, but it's an aspect of the spiritual world where Krishna resides. There is majesty. When we say in Vrindavan, in Vrindavan, compared to Mathura and Dwaraka and Ayodhya, in Vrindavan, the intensity of love is such, the intensity of sweetness of love is such that it eclipses or overwhelms the majesty aspect. But the majesty aspect is there, and from time to time Krishna shows it, and then he covers the devotees with his yogamaya, so they're not, the sweetness is not disturbed. It's a lesson that we hear again and again. So the sweetness is not disturbed. So Krishna wanted that, like we heard, in the evening, he covered Mother Jasoda with yogamaya because he wanted the affection of her as his mother, or he wanted her to experience the affection of mother towards him. And everything happens by his potencies, and so he showed, his potencies showed what he saw in his mouth, and then that sense of what she saw in the majesty aspect put her into a place where she was not able to feel the fullness of her motherly affection, and so he, Krishna, covered her with yogamaya, or this yogamaya potency, understanding Krishna's desire, covered her. The same thing is going to happen with the cowherd men. They saw, and then yogamaya covered them, and they forgot everything. It didn't diminish. It was done in such a way by Krishna that it would not diminish Mother Jasoda's affection, and the cowherd men's affection because of his Yogamaya potency. And his Yogamaya potency is the agency or one of the agencies by which he conducts his pastimes, his intimate pastimes with particularly the residents of Vrindavan. But for that matter, even the internal potency is acting with us. That's Radharani's mercy. She extends Krishna's service potential so we can engage in some service. And when every time I'm describing these things, that my thought goes to how are we to understand these things? They're so lofty, and we're so far from that loftiness. Well, one of the things that comes to mind when discussing this particular point, what are we to understand these things, is not to understand these things by our empiric power. It's not how you can understand these things. You can understand these things by hearing and acceptance and connecting with Krishna's, using the language that's used here, his Swarup Shakti. That's what this Bhagavatam is, and that's what the description, that's what our Bhagavad Dharma process is. Hearing, chanting, remembering the name, fame, qualities, pastimes, loving exchanges with his devotees. That's this. Krishna's potency is not understood by our little, processors. Not how we're going to understand it. I mean, we engage those faculties. We don't dismiss them. We hear our acharyas using their reasoning faculties and so forth. So we don't dismiss them, but we need to understand the limitations. We're not going to understand them that way. And we're, really trained up to understand things that way. It's like how the material world works, and we're using our faculties to understand. But we can't understand. It's said over and over, we can't understand that way. So then what's the use? There's the internal potency that we're connecting with just by hearing. Very, very confidential descriptions. Very potent and powerful descriptions. Just a little sharing. I don't want to go off in this topic, so please don't ask me to discuss it. But just 2 days ago, a PhD graduate from MIT was writing to me about their inability to understand the fall of the jiva. And they were using, their PhD intellect. It says this, but then why that? And if that's true, then the conclusion would be this, but why this? Very analytical. And I didn't poo-poo their use of analysis, but that's not the proper use of analysis to understand things that are inconceivable. Like this is inconceivable. We're used to, besides using our intellect that way, we're used to, there's material cause that produces a material effect, because everything within this realm is cause and effect. That's technology. Cause and effect. You wiggle this, and something over there wiggles. Like they're trying to find a cure for coronavirus. Something here wiggles, something there wiggles. Okay, we got it. We have to refine it and test it. And everything. Computers and space travel and communications and It's just technology, the cause and effect. And that's Sankhya. So Sankhya can be used for totally materialistic purposes, for totally impersonal purposes, either. And that's not the purpose of. Even you can wire to some degree, the Sankhya principles. Anyway, it go off into this. How to understand the Vedas? Well, there's some acceptance. There must be some acceptance that there is a pramana that's beyond senses and mind, because both senses and mind are fallible. Doesn't mean we trash them, but that's not the final pramana. The final pramana. So somehow, Shabda pramana, somehow this is correct. Somehow the living entities came into this material world, and from reasoning, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that God would do it. It doesn't make sense that we would do it. The whole thing doesn't make sense. It's quite inconceivable. Anyway, how to understand inconceivable things? It's not by our reason and logic. It's not accessible. I was looking for the reference, if somebody that's listening knows the reference, where Prabhupada writes, when the living entity becomes liberated, then they'll understand, and before liberated, they'll never understand. The living entity is coming within this material world. So don't try. It's futile, because the mind can't enter into such an understanding. But when the living entity is liberated, then the faculty is there to understand. So, back to the spiritual world. The spiritual world is something it's beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond reasoning, beyond. Even Atmaramas can see it, but they can't enter there. So how are we what's our qualification? We're not Atmaramas. But by the hearing process, with faith in the hearing process, it does mean we have to control the senses and mind. But that senses and mind control is being controlled by love. At least initially controlled by vidhis, and then as purification comes, controlled by love. That's the bhakti process. And then the inconceivable things can be understood in ways that they were never able to be understood before. And that's just the space that we're in because of our limited consciousness or covered consciousness. It takes faith for sure, but not blind faith. It takes faith that's reasoned. We're using our reasonable faculty to accept with faith all of this. Otherwise, why are we wasting our time? Let's see if there's some discussion. Here's the
Lord's plenary expansions up to Mahavishnu. They are based in spiritual world. Is that a correct statement? And they have separate their own abode, like Balaram, Pradyumna, Niruddha, all planar expansion. They have their own abode.
Yes.
And up to Mahavishnu.
When you say they have their own abode, it's not like each of those four, there's four abodes.
Separate planet system.
But it's not a separate plan for Balaram, a separate planet for Pradyumna, and a separate plan for Aniruddha, like that. Not like that. They're together, but they have a spiritual abode that's not within the material realm. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a, like Mahavishnu is in the spiritual world or in the material world?
Well, he's situated within the causal ocean, but he doesn't touch the material energy. So when the material, say it negatively, when the material energy is withdrawn, he remains. In that sense, he's not a product of matter, and when matter is withdrawn, he's not withdrawn. He and his abode are not withdrawn. It's the eternal abode. Is that clear? Okay.
In the Brahma Samhita it says like it's a Mahesh Dhan, above that Haridhan,
Yes.
and then Golok.
Yes.
So what is Haridhan?
Haridam is Vaikuntha.
The planets.
Yeah. Haridam is Vaikuntha. Included is Ayodhya within Haridam. It's a special place. Within Haridam, it's a special place. Yeah.
Yeah, Maharaj, this is just a comment followed by a question. As I was hearing the pastimes of residents of Raja getting, forgetting the whole pastime of seeing the spiritual planets, or Mother Yashoda forgetting the whole pastime of seeing Earth or universe inside the mouth. So how was it even benefiting them? Because they saw it and they forgot it. But I think I understood that the message is for our hearing pleasure, and this is how Krishna is showing his potency. Is that the correct understanding?
Not exactly. Your question is, what is the benefit if they see and then forget? That's your question. There's tattva and there's bhava. So the tattva is, he is the supreme. And the bhava is, he is our son. And they're not, one doesn't cancel the other. Krishna is lifting Govardhan Hill. He's showing his tattva. But the bhava overwhelms them. And then they start speculating. Who is he? And then the answer that's given is satisfying to them. And then again comes, because the situation with Varuna comes after that one. And then they speculate again. And then Krishna, the tattva is revealed. And then the bhava overwhelms. So it's always there, but it's just overwhelmed. And that's Vaikuntha, and that's Vrindavan. The benefit is, your question specific was the benefit of showing and then forgetting. So better not even show, because they'll just forget anyways. It's part of the relationship with Krishna that Krishna permits, and it's there because it's part of their connection with Krishna. It's an intrinsic part of their connection with Krishna from the get-go. Vasudeva Devaki. And then he goes to Vrindavan. He does transcendental things, which they can't see they can't see because of. But it's okay. His divinity is being exhibited again and again because that's who he is. It's not a waste. It's part of their relationship with him. they're feeling protected. And Garga put it really cleverly. He's endowed with powers of Narayan, powers like Narayan. And he'll protect the residents of Braja. So they're feeling his shelter, although they're looking upon him as their son or friend or lover. Here comes Aristasura, and they're, Krishna! Krishna comes. A little boy. But they have that within them. He's their protector. Although he's their lover and their friend and their son. It's part of their relationship. So it's not a waste. It's part of the relationship. That nice painting when Aristasura is coming down the trail and the gopis are embracing the trees. You know that painting? Mm-hmm. They're tamal trees. So the tamal trees are black, so they're embracing the tamal tree. Krishna! You're a protector, help. And then after he kills Aristasura, he goes to tell them, like, he's dead. You stay away from us. You've done something sinful. Well, wait a minute. And then, the Leela goes on, as if it wasn't divinity. Krishna Tattva is now Krishna Madhurya. It's part of their relationship. Again and again. Again and again. The sweetness overwhelms. Anything else?
So Guru Maharaj, it feels like the false ego is our worst enemy, like all along, So the devotees of Vrindavan, is it right to say that like in the spiritual world, they also did not have false ego?
Yes, that's correct. That's Divya's question. But the flip side is, Krishna doesn't have false ego. He's wanting them for their happiness. That's what he wants. That's love. Okay? Online, anything?
We have two questions. First one from Raghunandan Prabhu. Maharaj, you mentioned hearing and acceptance. Many a times while hearing, this acceptance or rejecting happens due to the mind. Acceptance of these valuable spiritual principles is what the spirit soul needs, especially to get out of material existence. What factors can help in going to the acceptance mode?
Well, one is understanding the importance of acceptance and looking at the opposite of non-acceptance. Another is the element of surrender that says Krishna is my protector, and so if I'm feeling protected or sheltered, then acceptance is easier. One of Prabhupada's disciple, Mataji's, her name is Ramburu. Has she ever come here? She lives in Los Angeles. Ramburu. She at a certain point in her life, she needed maintenance, because she was raising a family, and at a certain point she needed her maintenance other than through her husband. So she became and she is now presently a chaplain in counseling, professional, and now she's taking all, her life as a devotee, then her life in counseling, to now teach devotee counseling. And she has a seminar called something, Kruna Care, I think she calls it. And she's doing a seminar presently, and she's going to do another one sometime in a while. If you're interested, you can, or if anyone in the community is interested, she's accepting students. And Juna Jivana can give you information of how to become a student if people want. It might be nice to send it out to the community. Kruna Care Seminar. She's really good, really good. So she speaks on this principle of acceptance because in being a chaplain in places like hospitals and, really difficult places, I don't know what all of them are. I think, some homeless shelters and things like that. I don't know exactly where she is the chaplain, but one of the things that helps that she requires her service to do is to help people become accepting of the circumstance rather than whining and complaining and feeling beaten by the circumstance. And and the acceptance is based upon there is another shelter besides the temporary that's not there anymore, so it's gone. Something, one can easily go into a destitute or depression mode. It's prevalent in the world. It's acceptance of the circumstance because there's shelter. Something that helps acceptance principle is knowing that there's shelter, and the person who is your shelter is very kind and loving and is very powerful and can carry you through the difficulty. And that's like, specific to acceptance of a situation that's difficult, which, life has its difficulties. Everyone knows, the varieties of difficulties, and different for different people. Acceptance. In another response to his question, it comes up 3 times strongly in the Dhruva pastimes, where he hears from his mother, he hears from Narada, he hears from Swayambhuva Manu. Acceptance. So read the Srimad Bhagavatam carefully and let that message go in, because it's easy you hear it and it goes out the other ear. But if it goes in the heart through sound, then the principle of acceptance becomes strengthened. So there's some examples. And take her seminar. She'll teach you how to be more accepting.
The next question is from Archana Vaidya Mataji. How can we maintain our focus while hearing these inconceivable pastimes? Generally, we can focus better when we can relate with and understand something.
Well, do some of both, because humility is the pillar of bhakti, or the pillar of knowledge. Say it conversely, those that are proud aren't going to understand things, and if something is with easy grasp, it's easy to be proud. So something that's you have to reach for, that we can understand our tininess, and that's good. Understand your tininess. Then you're feeling, I have to reach out to Krishna, because otherwise it's beyond me. Same thing with chanting. Chanting is so simple, but how many people chant with absorption? How many people chant with distraction? So we need help. Oh, it's such a simple thing. And it's a core thing. We chant anyways because we know it's beneficial. So do some things that are more on the easy side and do some things that are more on the stretch side. Anything further? That's it? One more?
So this question is from Ranga Mataji. If after reaching Vaikuntha they stay eternal, then when and how will they reach Goloka? Because there is nothing else to get cleansed as they are already pure.
Well, once they reach Vrindavan, they're happy. They're not like, hey, I want to go to Goloka. Those who go to Vaikuntha are very content to be in Vaikuntha. They're not like, I want an upgrade. It's not like that. Not like that. Yeah, the mood is different, but the mood suits the person. And we go to that place which suits us by Krishna's arrangement. So who are we eternally? We don't know. We need to discover who we are eternally. And then according to who we are eternally, then something suits us. And we go there. It's not this material calculation. My friend went to Goloka and I only went to Vaikuntha. Boo-hoo. Okay. A practical question.
So while reading Srimad Bhagavatam and all these scriptures, so there's this whole other level of understanding.
Yeah.
Like, so how are we, like, especially with work and everything? So I always try to contemplate, should I just take like verse after verse, just read through the translation and just go once? Or should I really like take the deeper study? So how can like a beginner like me start?
Well, it depends on, each of us are different. You find something that suits you. Or a combination of things. We're all different. There's not like, this is it. And if you don't do this is it, you're just not going to get there. It's not like that. Find something that suits you. And then stay with it. And after staying with it for some time, you can look around and see. But don't get restless while you're staying with it. Because then you're not even present doing what you're doing. Just, something. And whatever spiritual progress you make doing this, and maybe later you're going to do that, maybe then even then later another thing, that's fine. You're not going to be at a loss because whatever you did and then did the next thing, that's going to stay with you. It's a permanent asset. So there's no loss. Find something that suits you. And as you go through layers of who you think you are and it's not really who you are, then you do some realignment with who you are and what suits you. It's just self-discovery. It's all good. Like Prabhupada would say, you lick on any side of the ice cream and it's sweet. Some people like, and some people like another thing. Or combination. Without the purports, we won't understand. That's for sure. I mean, it's purifying to read without the purports, but we won't understand without the purports. So, reading carefully the purports, and it's like this chapter a day. It's just to prime the pump, to get people reading, and then they want to understand. So then you have to read the purports, not just recite the chapter. We start somewhere. Do something that's uplifting. Systematic study is really good. And then it depends, there are different teachers, depending upon how busy life is. So the online things and remote things and self-study. And so there's, find something that suits. ideal is there's a good teacher, and you connect with the teacher, and it's not just the information, it's the relationship with the teacher. Because then you'll get a deeper understanding. Because it touches your heart, not just your head. Okay, Prabhupada Ki.